Good evening, everybody. I work on an approach to transport in leisure areas that's much more what we call vision led. And what red cards will go up soon. And what we mean by that, though, rather than trying to make things a bit less bad and tackling problems, we try to set out what really, really good could look like, and then how we might progress to getting there. So for this area, I think there's probably about three things that we'd have to uh, think about in order to do this. Firstly, how many cars fit in this area? So imagine the places that you're familiar with, whether it's Buttermere Village or Rothwaite or wherever it might be. I think a lot of people could have a conversation and come to a view on how many cars probably comfortably fit in that place. And that means two things. One, what place are there physically to park cars, but also the traffic that is induced by those cars getting there. So how much congestion is a result of those cars getting there. And that's an agenda-free conversation about how many cars fit in this landscape. Secondly, it's about, well, how many days of the year are there too many cars? And we've done some work on this in other valleys recently. And I think we're all aware of when it feels too busy, but how many days is that? And, I suspect lots of us are quaking in our boots about this coming Saturday because the forecast is great. And the world will descend, I suspect. But they're all quite different. The different valleys are quite different. So for Langdale, for instance, there's about 77 days a year when it's kind of too busy. Around Hawkshead, it's about 111 days. Ullswater, it's about 70 days. So there's a difference based on different places. So for this area, how many days are it too busy? And that could be worked out. In Langdale as well, there's about a third of the cars. There are about Of all the visitor cars that go to Langdale, there's about a third too many. So about two-thirds of those cars will fit, about a third are too many. For Hawkshead area, it's about 10%. So about 90% of the cars fit in Hawkshead area. For Ullswater, there's about a third too many. So about two-thirds of the visitor cars that go to Ullswater can comfortably fit in that place. The rest of them are too many. And you think, well, that's all very interesting, isn't it? Or not? What we then do is, right, what do you do with those excess cars and those excess visitors? And how can you manage those that those volumes of visitors differently? And this is where we think about how we could get access to those places differently. And so that would probably mean something like pre-booking cars for the available spaces. So yes, you can go there in a car so long as you can get a parking space, which is what we do in town centres and places anyway. We're used to this idea. There would then be enhanced shuttles and bike schemes or e-bike schemes or whatever it might be, so that if you haven't got a pre-booked parking space, you can still get there, but you get there by other means. And parking will be zoned as well. So if you want to park in the middle of Buttermere or at the bottom of Borrowdale on a sunny August weekend, it will cost you. Don't get me wrong here. It will cost, but you can do it if you can get a space. And that's done basically because there will be other much cheaper ways of getting there. Um, how would all that be paid for? Well, there'll be ticketing packages. Some people might just pay for a ticket to get on a bus, as usually happens, but it shifts more towards the kind of access pass model. So you might leave your car in a car park near Keswick somewhere and pay for your daily or weekly access pass to get you in, much more like happens in other countries, and I'll come on to that a little bit. You might think that's all fine. That's not going to happen here. Um, well, it could. And so, just as a couple of examples, it's normal in USA national parks to have busy seasons where they restrict the number of cars that go there. And it's completely normal that there are shuttle buses and the like that take people in. And so, it's a tried and tested model. And I mean that in terms of how it operates, but also how the economics stack up as well. Closer to home, Penny Pass in Snowdonia, or Erie National Park as it's now known. In 2020, in the COVID boom of the wave of domestic visitors, they did exactly this. So They installed pre-booking of the car park at the top of the pass, and they strictly enforced parking on the verges on the road up to it. So there are about 400, 500 cars normally parked on the verge. They strictly enforced it. They put on better shuttle buses, and it kind of pays for itself because of the way that the whole place is managed. Now, at the time, we were monitoring the reaction to this, and we were deafened by the silence. People were quite happy with it. They thought that's reasonable, that's perfectly fine. That seems like a fine way of organising how people get there. And the road was clear, which means that other people could get along the road that needed to. I've been to quite a lot of the Alpine valleys in Switzerland and Austria, especially, and I suspect Roger may have referred to some of these earlier. I understand you've heard about Switzerland and the Peak District, so this is quite normal in quite a lot. Oh, sorry, components of what I'm talking about are quite normal in quite a lot of places. So what I'm suggesting is we can take the relevant parts that are tried and tested elsewhere, put them together in a way that works for the localities we're talking about tonight, and we actually can start to conceive a different model for access, primarily focused on visitors for those areas. So what needs to be done in order to get there? There needs to be a conversation, and I think events like tonight and the process like you're going through are the ideal places where this can start. And what do we feel is too busy for this area? That's not the people that come in cars are evil and we want to ban them. This is no, no, no. What a balanced number of vehicles that fit in this area. And do we know that, and can we agree on it? It's really interesting because wherever people stand on their attitude to cars and car access, they tend to come to a fairly balanced view on what feels like too busy. So there needs to be a conversation about that and whether that is a good basis to start doing something with. Secondly, I've spoken about the components of a possible access management scheme. So that would need working on in more detail. Where might these other car parks go? Do you need them? Because some of your visitors might actually already have parked cars in Keswick, so you're just asking them to leave them there. Or they might not have come in a car at all, and so you're just asking them to get on a different way of getting into your area. And then it gets down to the really dull but important stuff, which is the economics of it all. So how do the economics of this stack up? Who takes the risk? Who takes the benefit of this? How do we get more of the benefit to reside back in the local places rather than leaking out of these areas? And those thorny issues of there will be losers, the people that currently get money that relates to car parking in these areas might lose out on some of this stuff, and they would rightly complain about that, and I suspect legally have a fairly strong case for having a problem with that, but others will benefit. So how do you reconcile those that benefit to those that lose so that the whole system can work? So what I'm trying to describe, I suppose, are components of a system, all of which are tried and tested, but only when you put them all together do you start to get a different way of tackling the problems of access in these, well, the problems of too many cars that are clogging up the roads in these places. There, I'll leave it at that for now.